they should not be afraid and that they were not alone. And when we had a president at that time who spoke the truth about the Soviet regime, when so many of us resist us, so how can you resist us, you people living under us? You people, resistance is futile. When an American president could tell the truth and bear moral witness to the truth of the situation and demonstrate that moral resistance, at least here at this level, that moral resistance was possible, then others could see that moral resistance was possible. And moral resistance is contagious. I wanted to just deliver, there are so many other things that can be said about this. It's one of the most important elements, of course, of moral resistance and the telling of truth is the ability to communicate. And this is why in the Cold War, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, the Voice of America, I believe were the single most powerful vehicles that the United States could supply to the struggle for freedom in the Soviet Empire. And I believe similarly that those of you who are involved in efforts to communicate are rendering a service of inestimable power and value, something beyond the scope of the Western strategic imagination. When the truth goes out and when people are able to communicate with each other, they have the incentive to organize in resistance. If they cannot communicate with each other, organized resistance becomes impossible. I wanted to just conclude with one or two reflections on what building a democracy requires. Many Americans suffer, and I think particularly we have a strain of Wilsonianism in this country. Its most recent variant was neoconservative Wilsonianism, and it involves an idea that America can somehow export democracy to the world, maybe even by force of arms, and that the other cultures in the world are like balls of clay, balls of putty that the great sculptors in the sky, who happen to live in Washington, D.C., can shape according to their whim. This is a utopian illusion that is based on the fundamental other utopian view of human nature, that human nature itself is malleable, and just good social engineers can create saints on a mass scale in society with the right ideological formulae. A feckless and utopian idea. One has to be realistic about human nature in order to build a successful, democratic, and peaceful and free society. Those systems that have a view that human beings can be perfected on this earth by social engineering are systems that become tyrannical. Fascist, communist systems all are based on this utopian view of human nature. The American system was based on the notion that men are not angels. James Madison said that if men were angels, there would be no need for government. And because men are not angels, you need to have law. And the laws have to be higher than the men in power. But there are statutory laws that can be written up in a fit of passion that can be unjust. And so you need a constitutional law that is higher than the statutory laws. You need to have systems of checks and balances, because you're going to have corrupt and sinful men in positions of power, and you need other divisions of the government to check them. You need a diffusion of power so that it's not all concentrated in one place in case that government is taken over by a corrupt and evil people. So here in this country, we divide it between federal, state, and local governments. You need a system of trial and error, such as an electoral system, because you know there will be errors. And ultimately, you need a respect for a higher law even than a constitution. a law that either comes from nature or from God, because majorities can deny human rights to minorities. And logically, you cannot have a system of majority rule with inalienable minority rights unless those rights come from something higher than majority. And so, one other thing here, and all of this really has to do with the proper recognition of the flawed nature of man. And with this in mind, let me just say, the founders of this country believed that you cannot have a free and democratic society unless you have a virtuous society. You cannot be a self-governing people unless you govern yourselves. And that means controlling your basest passions. You have to be able to control your basest passions. You have to control your evil impulses. And if you can't do it yourself, then the society's demand for order is going to require that there be a big government, a big nanny state of people who are going to control you because you can't control yourself. And therefore, free societies need virtuous people. And that means democratic movements need to be focusing on these moral categories as much as anything else. And the final thing I would like to say is that leadership in a free and democratic society has to be virtuous leadership. And one of the key virtues is humility. Once you get hubris, once you get arrogance, once you get egotistical, chest-thumping, glory-seeking leadership, you can kiss it off. You can kiss it off. You need somebody like George Washington being your leader at all different places, somebody whom the crowds wanted to make king and who refused to be king and who stepped down from power voluntarily to go back to his private life, to his farm, and having served the people. Leadership has to be servant leadership, where the people, the leaders, are ready to serve others, and in the Christian context, so to speak, as we like, to those of us who are Christians, wash the feet of those they serve. Thank you for being here. Good luck. God bless you all.